why would you release this to left-wing media? The entire operation seems so utterly bungled. You have to like assume that on the inside they're being played. You have to assume that this is a live grenade that the pin's been pulled and handed in order to discredit Team Trump.
Well, so that's one issue as well. The memo comes out, and my first query was, all right, nobody believes it. Kash Patel himself is on record for saying the exact opposite a year and a half ago. An unsigned, undated memo. And I thought for a second maybe it was fake, but it's on the DOJ website. Now, possibly there's been another, sort of declassified or low confidence classification leak. Maybe there's a saboteur who puts this on the website to sabotage the Trump campaign, but the DOJ hasn't come out to repudiate it. They haven't come out to contradict it. It's in line with everything they've been saying to everybody's disbelief for the last 2 months, to the contradiction of what Pam Bondi herself said a few months ago. And so what in the name of sweet holy hell is going on? Is this a real document? How is it not dated? How is it not signed? How does it just appear on the DOJ website without any sort of announcement? And what the heck is going on? Because my theory to all of this, or at least one of the questions I had, if you wanted to discredit Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, you would make them basically publicly say, I love Big Brother, and say something that contradicts what they have been saying themselves for the last 3-4 years. Bongino saying, never let go of the Epstein file. This is important. This implicates the hires up. Patel coming out and
Testify,
saying,
Viva.
Bill Gates is on the client list. And now this memo that makes Patel look like a total liar. It makes Bondi look like a liar. But if your goal was to discredit Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, two of the men that MAGA and the populist movement had the greatest faith in, this is exactly how you do it. But there hasn't been an answer to how this unsigned, undated memo is leaked. Mm-hmm. And it says things that nobody believes, not even people on the left. And even if it's true, Epstein killed himself because he was left unsupervised for 10 hours with extra linens, no cellmate, taken off suicide watch, and no one checked in on him from 10 in the evening until 6 in the morning. That's a conspiracy that needs to be explored, not accepted as just another day at the Metropolitan Detention Facility.
I'm so glad that you said that, Viva.
That might have been right before my phone overheated in the car and went dead. If you didn't see me, I tried to make an appearance on Benny Johnson this morning. It was mildly successful, but what ended up happening is I was in the vehicle. I didn't want to hear the air conditioning running while I was doing this interview. And so I turned the car off. Also, climate crisis. And it got so flipping hot in the car that my phone overheated, didn't shut off, but it interfered with the signal. And so I might have Benny Johnson on at 4 o'clock on my channel so we can finish this off. But we're talking about it beforehand. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the interwebs. We should be live across Rumble, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and on Twitter, or as they say in French, Twitter, or now it's called X. We can't not talk about this. I sort of feel like maybe I'm kicking a dead horse. I don't think I am, but I'm going to keep kicking anyhow because the horse is only mostly dead. And we're going to keep kicking this horse because it's not because someone instructed us or told us to keep talking about this story. It's because this arguably, but not arguably, is one of the biggest stories of our time. It's Jordan Schachtel on Twitter. I like him. I've had him on the channel. He's a good guy. Doesn't mean that his opinion on everything is going to be on point. On this particular question, I vehemently disagree. And I want to bring up what he said earlier in order to highlight why I disagree with it. Forget it. Jordan Schachtel basically came out and said, yeah, it's a nothing non-issue at this point in time, sort of like the Hillary Clinton. At this point in time, what difference does it make? And the only people who are paying attention to it are people on the internet doing it for clicks. Let me bring you up the tweet thread. And I'm not trying to poop on Jordan Schachtel. He does good work. He's a good man. Just very much vehemently disagree with him on this. We're going to play this video from Trump in a bit because if there's ever been a type of gaslighting in real life, and I say this with the utmost of respect and sincere support for Donald Trump, this feels like gaslighting to me. Someone telling you for the last 10 years, among different sources, when whatever news outlet it was that killed the story, they killed the biggest story of the year because influences, because they wanted to be in the good books of the Crown over in England. Donald Trump talking about declassifying the Epstein files along with JFK, Martin Luther King. Why? Because they're all freaking generationally important documents. Pam Bondi talking about it. Kash Patel, Bongino talking about it with Bartiromo. Kash Patel talking about it with Joe Rogan. Promising this video, promising documents, not letting up on it. I'll get to Kash Patel in a bit. And then all of a sudden, Trump telling us, basically, why are we still talking about this? The day after the DOJ releases an unsigned, undated memo to their website, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary.
Whether or not he ever worked for a foreign or intelligence agency. Why is it important? I'll pull you up a clip in a second to show you why it's important. Why might it be important that the individual who was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor, whose partner in crime literally was convicted of sex trafficking children to people we don't know, who might have been operating one of the biggest blackmail extortion rings at a global scale involving Prince Andrew, who couldn't be involved because he doesn't sweat. And the day that he was eating pizza at a pizza shop, I kid you not, he said he couldn't have been having relations with Virginia Giuffre, who happened to have died by suicide since the time they promised the release of these documents. No.
Miami
irrelevant.
Attorney Alex Costa, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of Saturday?
Yeah, sure. If
Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah. Mr. Trump, President Trump, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've got the pause button. There was a minute missing from the unedited, continuous surveillance footage. I mean, a minute's not enough to run into a cell and strangle someone. I'm being glib. There was a minute missing from that video. No one told us that until the sleuths of the internet or Chat GPT found one solid minute missing from the surveillance footage, which they showed purportedly proves that Epstein had to have killed himself because for 10 solid hours, nobody went in or out of the cell, did a check on a man who was suicidal 2 weeks earlier. There's a minute missing. Move on. But sorry, Trump is coming in to berate or shame into silence a reporter for asking a question that is legitimate, current, and above all else, relevant in light of the DOJ's own memo that is unsigned, undated, posted to the DOJ website Sunday.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy?
Well, here, President Trump, not only are people still talking about it, your people are still talking about it. And there's a reason for that. You yourself were talking about it, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason why it was put on par with the documents, the classified documents of the assassination of JFK, of the assassination of MLK. There's a reason why it was on par with that, why I refer to it as a litmus test of an election issue. There's a reason why Pam Bondi has been going on Fox News talking about it. There's a reason why Director of the FBI, Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino were talking about it on Maria Bartiromo. There's a reason why Director of the FBI was talking about it on Rogan, because not only do people care about it, people see this as central to the functioning government of America and potentially to the world. And I'm not trying to oversell it, but if it were to hypothetically turn out that geopolitical decisions were the result of some form of blackmail extortion ring, that might have a destabilizing effect on the world, which some might hypothesize could be a reason for which now the administration doesn't want anyone looking into that. I'm not saying this is a theory that I have concrete evidence of, other than the fact that, Prince Andrew seems to have been intimately involved with Jeffrey Epstein. Ehud Barak, intimately involved with Jeffrey Epstein. He was at least working with FBI, arguably with other intelligence, billions and billions, wherever the hell he made his money from. Nobody knows where it came from. Lex, whatever the guy's name is. He had his island where he flew people off to, where God knows what was happening because he had... No. If it were to turn out that this could, in fact, have a destabilizing effect on the world, one could understand what Trump is doing right now. To sort of... This is the definition of you guys are still talking about that? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought 3 months ago you promised declassification of the documents via Pam Bondi. I thought 3 months ago it was so important. It was on Pam Bondi's desk. But now we're still talking about it? You losers still talking about that? You're damn right.
Creep. That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time? And do you feel like answering?
Now, to steelman it for Trump, yes, there are crises right now to deal with, and there are successes to take credit for right now. But the day after the memo's released that says Epstein killed himself, there's no blackmail material, there's no client list, in wishy-washy legalese that leaves a lot of room for wiggling out of it. To criticize a journalist for asking the question is ass backwards. I would criticize a journalist for not asking that question right now when given the opportunity.
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question.
Listen to Pam Bondi try to wiggle out of what she said on Fox News. The files on my desk, what she said privately, video of criminality. Apparently, only Epstein. Thousands of victims, only Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of trafficking, only for Epstein.
Question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well.
Why? Because they are equally, relatively speaking, sufficiently important to the fabric of American government. There's a reason why Epstein, on par, JFK, are MLK.
That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night.
I wouldn't make hay of that missing minute. That explanation is somewhat more confusing than it needed to be. I don't even understand the explanation. I don't care for the missing minute per se, because even if Epstein killed himself, you know what I have to say about that. But Jordan Schachtel says, I have to disagree here in response to Liz Wheeler, who I had on the channel. Liz Wheeler was one of the, I'm not even calling them influencers, I say independent journalists, alternative media. Liz Wheeler was one of the alternative media who got humiliated during Bindergate when they came out of the White House, were handed a binder of information that was not only public already, public information was more public than the binders that they had, because the binders they had contained redacted information, which you could actually find unredacted on the internet. She was one of the alternative media that was embarrassed that day. And I had her on to explain what happened, because I sort of knew what happened and didn't think the wrath that the social media, alternative media journalists were getting was warranted. Liz Wheeler says, President Trump snaps at a reporter who asks him Epstein question. Trump is massively misreading his base on this. To which Jordan Schachtel says, I have to disagree here. He's telling obsessives to get a life. His base is focused on quality of life, job security, and national sovereignty. Well, what if all of those things are intertwined to the truth about Epstein? But set that aside. Family, prosperity, American excellence, etc. Espionage conspiracies are intriguing, but they do not rank high with voter priorities. Then why did Trump talk about it and all but promise to release the declassify the Epstein files? So respectfully disagree. They came out with a memo. It's so important. Bondi and all of the administration has been talking about it. I want to bring up a clip here. I'm telling you this, like, I mean, I'm honest about it all the time. I say whenever someone says I'm honest, it sort of implies that there's times when they're not being honest. I am perpetually honest because I am afraid of the proverbial sky in the camera in the sky, eye in the sky, of being thought of as a liar. There's no greater curse. I like Bongino. I think Bongino's biggest issue here is he's not being given free rein to do what he wants. He's not being given free rein to do what he thinks As far as I'm concerned, this is my personal opinion. He's not the He's not the director of the FBI. He's an employee of the state right now. He's not independent to express himself freely. As far as I'm concerned, this is on the shoulders of Pam Bondi, but forget the guy's name on the left here. But listen to this, and we're going to understand exactly why people think that Epstein might have been an intelligence asset. You know, in partnership with Ghislaine Maxwell, whose father was Robert Maxwell, who was arguably, but not arguably, an asset for various intelligence. Had Mossad show up at his funeral after his mysterious death under mysterious circumstances. Jeffrey Epstein, having former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, visit him 30 times in the years after it was known that Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile.
Terry, were you ever made aware at any point your handling of this case if Mr. Epstein was an intelligence asset of some sort?
So there has been reporting to that effect.
But does the Jeffrey Epstein case go much deeper than just that? This is from Substack, Technofog Substack. He asked a serious question. Apparently, Rolling Stone had reported about Epstein's dealings in the arms world in the 1980s, which led him to work for multiple governments, including the Israelis. Ward sources said that Epstein was, quote, known in the intelligence world as a hyperfixer, someone who can go between different cultures and networks.
Says, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like, you sure that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure that he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset, meaning his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that these videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter, I mean, aces, right? Swore Epstein was either a witting or unwitting intelligence asset, and they may have had his plane wired up, and they're the ones who have all this stuff. So the point is, to sum it up, how do you know some of these countries aren't going to some of these power players who aren't making decisions because, hey, you wouldn't want this video out there, right?
I mean, it's gaslighting of the highest order. And now there's two things are true here, or one of two things are true, I should say. Bongino was right. Bongino was wrong. If Bongino was right, and he's now in a position where, as an employee of the state, he can no longer assert his rightness, that's got to be very frustrating for Bongino, to put it mildly. Or Bongino's wrong. All of the theories that he, Patel, others entertained over the years are wrong. Epstein was not an asset. Epstein was not an intelligence. Epstein was just some perv who trafficked women for his own masturbatory pleasures. And Bongino was wrong, and that's got to be embarrassing. Seymour Hersh did an expose back in the day of Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, being an intelligence asset for Mossad. Mossad shows up at Robert Maxwell's funeral. Ghislaine, by the way, Robert Maxwell died by falling off his boat, allegedly, after a heart attack. The boat was named the Ghislaine, his daughter's name. His daughter works with Jeffrey Epstein, mingling with the most powerful people on earth. It's not just Bongino who has been, I don't say obsessing, I say rightly focusing on this story for years. Kash Patel was on with, I played it yesterday. Let me just play it one more time because it's relevant under the circumstances. Was on with Benny Johnson relatively recently. Is this it? Oh, this is the clip from Benny Johnson, but it's on with Jay Stewart. I don't know who this is here. Let me just make sure. You win some, you lose some. It's all the same to me. Kash Patel said Bill Gates was, quote, lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that Epstein list. Why? And let's play this one out. I played it yesterday. Bear with me.
You know, it's the same thing with Epstein's list. It's like, what the hell are these Republicans doing? Oh,
I saw you
give out the list.
I saw you make news this morning about that. I got to get to that.
Yep.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list?
This is December 2023, by the way. This is not 10 years ago. This is not 5 years ago. This is Kash Patel, December 2023. Kash becomes director of the FBI. Epstein killed himself. There is no blackmail list, and there is no list with incriminating information. There are no videos, and everyone should move on and move forward. Who cares? What difference does it make at this point in time?
And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but he released the names, right? What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list? You're going to accept Dick Durbin's word, or whoever that guy is, as to who is on that list and who isn't, and that it can and can't be released? Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. We have an election coming up, and we need to adjudicate this matter at the polls. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything. But how are you going to reward the FBI with a new headquarters building after their illegal surveillance on Donald Trump continues with a reauthorization of FISA, and we can't even get basic documents out? This is why America hates Congress. And this is why I'm tired of the Republican majority saying they're going to get the job done and failing.
Well, my goodness, does this not take on a different meaning these days? Now, I made a joke, a glib, sarcastic remark yesterday on Twitter. If there's no Epstein list and there's no blackmail material and there's no incriminating client list, well, surely then Bill Gates is going to sue Kash Patel for those defamatory per se statements, right? Surely. And then people jokingly reply, hell no, Bill Gates is going to get Kash Patel a 40-year-old bottle of scotch for Christmas. If what Kash Patel said there is wrong, it's defamatory per se, defamatory on its face with no further need for interpretation. Now they come out, the DOJ, in a document that I don't think it was authored by Patel, and says, no. What Patel said right there is categorically false, objectively defamatory. Well, Bill Gates should be suing him. Unless it's true, and Bill Gates doesn't really want to sue him whatsoever because he's quite thankful that the DOJ is taking this posture right now. I said this sort of as an alternative theory that I sort of float half seriously. If this were a deep state operation, or this was a political hit job to take down two of the most populist voices in the MAGA movement, Bongino and Patel, what would be done differently than forcing them to eat crow on everything they've said for the last 3 to 5 years? Because either they're right, and right now they're forced to be quiet, or they're wrong, and they're right now forced to admit that they were wrong for the last 5 years. What would you do differently? The only question is whether or not these would be big enough fish for any deep state political apparatus to go after to try to destroy. But what would you do differently? You've got both of these men who are, some would say I'll still say are adored for their insights, for their analysis, now forced to either say publicly something or nothing, and in saying something or nothing, admit that they were either right but can't say anything about it right now, or they were wrong and they have to admit it. Implicitly, tacitly, via that DOJ memo that says what they both said we watched right now and listened to, what they've said over the last several years was objectively wrong and arguably defamatory for Kash Patel. It's wild. And then you get people telling you, move on, what's the big deal? I mean, I'm not going to pull the whole, it's the most serious criminality on earth. It's the most serious criminality on earth. How can anybody dare say, move on, who cares? It's Hillary Clinton saying, what difference does it make how they died in Benghazi? And when you start getting vocal critique from the most populist voices on earth, OAN News, Jack Posobiec, Benny Johnson, everybody, other than a few people here and there saying, what's the big deal? Can we not just stop fighting with each other and move on? First of all, this isn't fighting. This is legitimate criticism where you don't take someone spitting on your face and telling you it's raining. I made the joke, it went from release the documents, there are no documents. Who's Jeffrey Epstein? I made a meme. Someone actually stole my meme. Pam Bondi, tonight on Fox News. Jeffrey Epstein? Who's Jeffrey Epstein? Chanel Ryan from OAN. I'm convinced now more than ever Epstein and Maxwell were Mossad CIA agents. With the, quote, files, end quote, kept at SDNY, any, quote, evidence, end quote, is gone or in another country. All we know of Epstein's clients are capped up to 2016. Guess it's a coincidence they announced the Israeli passport holding Epstein had, quote, no list, end quote, a day before Netanyahu visits the White House. I hadn't actually put that together in so many. I was just noticing that, ever since that conflict between Israel and Iran, the 12-day war that wasn't a war that Israel totally didn't drag Trump into, and the ceasefire and resolution, we haven't been able to talk about the Epstein stuff anymore. When you get Alpha Fox making jokes, this is fantastic, by the way. This is the 1 minute. It's a joke, people. It's AI. The 1 minute of the Epstein surveillance footage has been revealed. I mean, there's funny and there's funny, and this is freaking funny. As if Hillary would go in herself. Ugh. Hillary would use a muscular cellmate. That's funny. But when you start getting the feedback, it's not crazy people online doing this for clicks. It has been journalism for the last 10 years that had been ignored. And then once it got exposed, you had legit journalists focusing on it. So much so that it became attention of and policy of the administration. Then they get in and then they say, no, there's nothing here. Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene. What about her little black book? The 97-page book contains the names and contact details of almost 2,000 people, including world leaders, celebrities, and businessmen. No one believes there is not a client list. And then she's citing an article because even mainstream media, legacy media, was talking about it. And I glibly replied to Marjorie Taylor Greene, no, don't you see, Marjorie? They literally called it a, quote, client list. So if it's a Rolodex, well, that's not a client list. So we can say there's no incriminating, quote, client list because it's an incriminating Rolodex. Or there is a client list, but it's not incriminating. That entire memo was drafted for a lawyer to say, we told you the truth. You just didn't read properly and you just didn't know to ask the right questions. Oh, you asked for a client list. There's no client list. I mean, there's a document with names and whatnot, but that was just a directory. It was just a contact list. They weren't clients. Oh, if they were blackmail victims, then they weren't clients either. They were victims of blackmail. They were marks. I once literally had a lawyer tell me when we were in deposition and I said, any and all documents from blank, blank, blank. And then I find out that lawyer withheld from me a specific document. And I said, I asked for this. He's like, no. You asked for correspondences. You didn't ask for emails. It was something as dishonest as that. I think, what did I say? Any emails? And they said, well, you asked for emails. You didn't ask for correspondence. But typically it's any emails, correspondence, written, verbal, whatever. And I actually had a lawyer say, hey, you didn't ask the right question. Take me to in front of a judge and see if the judge cares. So that's what's going on. And it's infuriating because people should care. The fallout is massive, could be massive. And I hope Trump is feeling the base to see what the response is to this, because it ain't good. And people aren't going to be shamed into silence on one of the most central issues of our generation, as far as I'm concerned.